here, Countershot Master. This is part 2 of a video. So if you haven't seen part 1 of the video, you want to go back and listen to part 1 before you look at this one. So let me continue. We were on Eddie Hearn and we were
That makes them very, very dangerous. Well, I'm talking about this is a kid. He's a bad one.
This is where we were.
Right. Just like Mike Tyson was, just like some of these other...
All right, we were on Mike Tyson. That's what I was discussing. And I was saying that Mike Tyson had wilded out. He had done some things, but he had also admitted to drug use and things like that. As we know, Custody Motto died, and he didn't do well after that. He got involved in some other organizations with other people. It didn't go well for Mike Tyson, and he had a pretty rough upbringing himself. So, but he has improved, and like all of us, hopefully in life, have improved. And there you are. But to compare him with Mike Tyson, that's not a good comparison, because Mike said things that a lot of people wouldn't say, and that's just the way it is. Now, interestingly enough, Eddie Hearn would probably he's obviously considered Mike Tyson savage, because that's what he's trying to make Gervonta Davis out to be. And maybe Mike had some savage moments, but so have some of Eddie's fighters. I don't know all of his fighters. I just know of one right offhand that I really don't care for in Tyson Fury, and I'll get to that in a second, because he's a big cheat among other things. But Mike, interestingly enough, is very articulate. He's extremely articulate. You might not like the way he talks, but he's extremely articulate. Everybody looks at big old 220, 30-pound Mike Tyson, heavyweight champion of the world, 2 or 3 times, I think 3 times maybe, and they listen to his voice, because Mike talks like this and he expresses himself in this way right here. They don't take him seriously because they think he's like a Mighty Mouse or something. But if you listen to what he's saying, Mike Tyson gets into some very in-depth. He gets very in-depth into some very interesting subjects, and he's well read. He's very well read, and he's a boxing historian. And I would bet my right arm, literally my right arm, that he's read more books than Eddie Hearn. So if you are a person like Eddie Hearn, you think you're of the intelligentsia, because you're so erudite, get over yourself. A simple individual like Mike Tyson, has probably most likely read way more books than you. So get over it. Now, since we're comparing people, and he's saying that, some of these other great champions have been that way, and basically saying that they're not normal human beings. They're like I say, he's comparing them to animals. I want to show you something, but let's finish this out.
Just like Mike Tyson was, just like some of these other greats were, and that makes them very, very dangerous.
And that makes them very, very dangerous. And as I said, this type of mentality that he's portraying is very, very dangerous in our society. So, talked about Mike Tyson. He talked about Gervonta Davis. And so, while we're on the subject of people who don't necessarily think about things and people who are dangerous and savage, let's take a quick look, fair use, at his guy, Tyson Fury, who cheated in all 3 of these fights against Deontay Wilder. Let's go.
Looks like if he lands a good punch, Deontay will go down.
What was he just doing with his tongue right there? He said, I want to taste blood. Fury did it.
Yeah, he wants to taste blood. The blood that he drew illegally, he wants to taste. And see, the commentators celebrated. Now, had that been a black man, God knows what would have been said, and God knows how he would have been fined. And he never would have been allowed to get away with the methods that he was using to cheat in that fight. But people don't want to admit that he did it. I have enough experience in this to know what I'm seeing and know what I'm hearing. And when I understood when it came to my attention, what was going on in these fights. I analyzed those fights inside out, and there's a lot that they're changing history with these fights. By the way, he shouldn't be heavyweight champion, but this is savagery.
Fury did it.
Now, whether he actually licked this man's blood, not neither here nor there. This is the disgusting type thing that we can expect to see from Eddie Hearn's fighter. This is what we can expect to see. All right. I don't particularly like it. Okay? I don't particularly like it, but Eddie's okay with that. All right? So while we're talking about Gervonta Davis and what makes him so dangerous, then we have to look at things like that, don't we? So the question was, how he would assess the fight that Gervonta Davis had against Hector Luis Garcia, and his answer had nothing to do with anything. These are the type of things we can expect. Instead, he decided to dehumanize Gervonta Davis, and Gervonta Davis actually took it upon himself to tweet this guy. Now, this is not the entire thing, but I got a piece of it. And he had asked Eddie Hearn why he said what he said. And Eddie Hearn apparently was trying to play stupid and ask him what he meant. And Gervonta Davis said, "What do you mean, what? What do you mean, what? What you said? That's what I'm asking you about, what you said. What do you mean, what? What you said?" So you see it here on the screen. In the interview, if you watch, I was explaining why you are a dangerous fighter. I said you're not a deep thinker. Ryan is, and that make you dangerous. I know that people probably talk and text or whatever sometimes. I don't know what he did, but it's not good. But we're looking past this. Everybody messes up with tweets and stuff, even though I don't like the guy. Okay, but he's, now he's saying that Ryan is. And I think that's very interesting because Ryan Garcia fell apart and pulled out of fights due to psychological problems. Let's just call it for what it is. And then they started with the mental health stuff, and then it's very real and all this and all that. Well, Black people have to go through hell every day of the week, every week of the year. And contrary to popular belief, slavery technically really didn't end the way they said it did. And discrimination is definitely on a high. And we're in a dangerous point in society right now. I'm not going to deal with that, but I could pick things apart right now. Things are very bad. And so Ryan Garcia is the deep thinker, but that's what makes you dangerous. He's not a deep thinker. You're a deep thinker. That's what makes you dangerous. It's senseless that what he's trying to do here. Ryan Garcia, he may be, a pretty articulate guy. But at the end of the day, what's coming out of his mouth, it's not anything all that important. He's doing a lot of dance and a lot of, online stuff with the kids, but, nothing that's going to change the world. It's not like some of the things he's saying are, somehow, prophetic or profound. But he's a talker. Gervonta Davis he's kind of a shy guy, believe it or not. So it is what it is. So he says, I said, you're not a deep thinker, right? Ryan is, and that makes you dangerous. So he didn't even apologize, and he hasn't apologized yet. This has been over a month ago, I guess, and he's not going to apologize because he's the fruit that fell from a tree that we will deal with in a minute. So, he said, so they, Gervonta Davis says, so they cut the clips. And then he said they took a few words from a 5-minute conversation about the fight. Now, there may be more, but I'm just giving you a little bit of what was happening with this. And, so you can understand where I'm coming from with all this. All right, so that's kind of a little thing that went down. Now, Gervonta Davis, at some point, he had told him, well, he wasn't, he's not so inarticulate. He's not so inarticulate, uh, not so dumb that he signed a contract with Eddie Hearn. See, Eddie Hearn tried to sign him and didn't work out for him. So that's the message. Okay, those are the messages that I got, and that's how Eddie Hearn dealt with that. Now, what we're dealing with, like I said, is the dehumanization of an individual. And now what I'm going to get into is a little bit of Papa Hearn, okay? Now we're dealing with something on a whole nother level as well. Now this guy here, you gotta love. This is Daddy Hearn, okay? It's not Eddie, but this is Barry. This is Daddy Hearn. And this, of course, is Dillian White. Okay? This is Dillian White. Look at the eyes of this man. This is the guy that's fighting with the Hearns. People. With the Hearnses, with that clan, okay? That's Dillian White. And he's from the UK, along with these other characters. Look at that picture. Well, I want you to know what was said during this particular press conference, because these are the eyes of an empty person who, my goodness, I don't know. I don't know what's going on there, but I do know that Eddie didn't get his views from a magazine or some white supremacist propaganda outside of the house. He was fortunate enough, or unfortunate enough, depending on how you look at it, to get his from his papa. And people are going to say things at home, and they're going to use terms sometimes, I guess, that they may not use outside of the house, and maybe they're not as deeply prejudiced as they might appear to be, but usually they are. These people are saying this stuff publicly, which is almost frightening. So I want you to listen to something that Barry Hearn said. Okay.
What does he do now? He's at this stage. I think he's been very badly treated by the WBC. I mean, Brazil should never have been the mandatory for Deontay Wilder. He's been smashed to bits in AJ whenever he wanted. And suddenly, Dylan White is overlooked by the WBC. And we're still campaigning with the WBC for his position to be clarified for where his career goes next.
Now listen.
And bear this in mind, that Matchroom Sport have a fight-by-fight arrangement with Dylan White. Isn't that weird? Why do we have... He's not tied up like the slave contract of yesteryear. When I was running boxing, it was much easier. We were slave traders. We had these guys and they were working for us and we was the boss. The pendulum has swung. Now I have to say, Mr. Dillian White. I have to be respectful. And it's really a nice position to be in because we can be honest with each other. Dillian, you're not under a long-term contract, but we like you. And Dylan's had tremendous offers from around the world, but he's backed himself. He's going to be a major player in his mind for some time to come.
Now that's deep. That's so deep. It's not even funny. We're talking real slave talk now. We're talking real slave talk now. He said it and he meant it. Listen to this.
With the WBC for his position to be clarified. Nice position to be in because we went out like the slave contract of yesteryear when I was running boxing.
Here we go.
But bear this in mind, that Matchroom Sport have a fight-by-fight arrangement.
Matchroom Sport has a
With Dylan White. Isn't that weird?
fight arrangement with Dillian White.
Why do we have... He's not tied
Isn't that weird? Why do we have...
up like the slave contract of yesteryear when I was...
Listen to that.
Isn't that weird? Why do we have... He's not tied up like the slave contract.
He's not tied up by the slave contracts that we had of yesteryear.
Of yesteryear when I was running boxing, it was much easier.
When I was running boxing, it was much easier.
We were slave traders.
We were slave traders. So when I show you what I'm going to show you, don't lose your mind. This is what these people really think. This is how they feel. And I'm going to explain.
We had these guys and they were working for us and we was the boss.
We had these guys, they were working for us and we were the boss.
The pendulum has swung.
But the pendulum has swung.
Now I have to say,
Mr. Dillian.
I have to be respectful.
I have to be respectful.
And it's really a nice position to be in because we can be honest with
Said
it.
it's a nice position to be in because we can be honest with one another.
Dillian, you're not under a long-term contract, but we like you.
He's not under, he says they can say, Dillian, we're not under a long-term contract, but we like you. In other words, we don't have you on a slave contract. We can't do that anymore. By God, I would like to get you back in chains. You people, I wish I could just have all of you people back in the chains that we had you in the days of yesteryear. See, people get angry when you talk about how boxing, you know, how these people have these black boxers tied up and how so much is different for the black fighters and how people compare these other sports like football, how they have their, you know, the way they do their tryouts and things like that, or their combine, whatever they call it, it's like a slave trade. The fella that, I don't follow all these sports, I only look at fighting, but the kid that came out and took a knee and they went off on this guy, you know, he was protesting certain things, but you know, he talked about some of this stuff, I believe. But the thing is, they want to act like it's a stretch and that you're being crazy by comparing how they do things to the slave trade. But the teams do have owners, and people talk like this man is talking, and it's very dangerous because, like I said, they go to the point of using science as a means to justify their lies and to justify their actions. And that's why I say it's dangerous. And that's how we get into the things we get into. So he wants to own this man again, but he's saying, but it's all right. I got to treat you well now, but it's okay. I can tell you the truth. Hey, we can't get you in those slave contracts. I wish we could, but you know what? We could be honest, and we like you anyway. But they don't. We like you anyway.
And Dylan's had tremendous offers from around the world.
Now
he's
listen.
backed himself.
He's had tremendous offers from around the world, but he's back to himself. I don't know what kind of offers Dillian White's had, but to be with him lets me know that Dillian White is either someone. I've seen some very strange things coming from Dillian White, and also the way Anthony Joshua acted recently, being under these guys, and it makes me wonder what's really going on. I'm going to get into that because people like this with these attitudes and with that kind of money, I wonder, what are they into? I would like to be a fly on the wall in their homes because these type attitudes and the type of control that they have and that they desire over people, it makes me wonder, especially with certain types of trade that are going on right now illegally among people. I really wonder what may be going on at the Hearn's house, at the Hearn house. I would really like to be a fly on the wall. I really would.
A major player in his mind for some time to come.
He said he's mine for some time to come. He said he's come back to himself. He said he's mine.
He's backed himself. He's going to be a major player in his mind for some time to come.
He's mine for some time to come. And look at this guy. Look at this guy. Does this look like a man of strength right now? You could be a heavyweight fighter and you can be a champion. He's not right now, but it doesn't make you a strong man. It doesn't make you a strong man to be a fighter doesn't necessarily make you a strong man, because strength is measured in various ways. And one way is to stand up for yourself. And in those eyes, I don't see where he's been taking a stand. And if anything, he should have taken a stand when those statements were being made, but he didn't. And that's very, very odd to me. I could play a clip where they chase him down, and I don't know where he is, but this man here, Eddie Hearn, chases down Dillian White, and there's a cameraman with him, and he's saying, "You can't get away from me. Don't try to run. You can't get away from me." And Dillian White turns and he's puffing a little bit, saying, "I'm not trying to get away from you. I'm not trying to get away from you," and all this. And then he's like, "Yeah, you are. You're trying to get away. You're trying to get away." And there's a strange conversation that takes place. Also, I've seen some strange things between Barry and Anthony Joshua, unfortunately. But that would be one of those things that I would have to deal with, at another time. I just want to express that these people literally want to own you. He was not playing when he said we had they had slave contracts, and it was easier. And so when you look at a guy like this, and he's talking about people like Gervonta Davis and Mike Tyson, and trying to use all these other individuals and demonize them, because that's what they do. They demonize you, and they dehumanize you to put you on a level to where, if they decide to enslave you, is justified. See, that's where we get into things like cognitive dissonance. Okay, which a term people overuse, but I'm going to allow for some of this to be better understood by people that are far more qualified than myself, because you could argue I'm not qualified, but I see what I see and I understand what I understand. But I think it's very interesting when we see things like this. So now, you have a guy like Eddie Hearn who said what he said about the slave deals they had, and so on and so forth. I want you to hear something. This is very interesting. Okay.
Thomas Jefferson actually close out my book with a soliloquy from Thomas Jefferson, where he says, and I quote, "Indeed, I tremble for my country when I consider that God is just and that his justice cannot sleep forever." Those were his words. Thomas Jefferson becomes a very important person as we begin to look at perceptions, because you see, if Thomas Jefferson said it, it must be true. He set the stage for not only what his countrymen believed, but what everyone believed around the world. He said blacks smell bad and were physically unattractive. This is a little inconsistent with his behavior, you think? Now, most black people knew about Sally Hemings. My grandmother used to talk about Sally Hemings, but it's just amazing. White people started clutching the pearls, not Thomas. Then he goes...
Sally Hemings, the slave that he had children with. I'm sure he had children with many, though.
I'm going to say something even more egregious. He says that we required less sleep. And you see, for me as a social scientist, this became very interesting. Why would Thomas Jefferson, in other words, what cognitive dissonance was he experiencing that he somehow had to mediate? What was he feeling that he would make such an assertion that we required less sleep? What was a work day for an enslaved African? From KC to KC, the slave narratives say. From KC to KC, and here's what you get faced with in 2017. Oh, you African Americans, you're oversensitive. You have, what empirical evidence do you have to support that? How can you count and measure that? Do you have any physical evidence to suggest that they didn't have breaks and vacations and what have you? What do you know? Because this is, it's a shutdown. You get the pushback. Well, we actually do have evidence. Well, you can first ask the enslaved Africans. They can tell you. This is Sarah Gudger. She said, never know nothing but work, never knew rest. Felt like my back was going to break. This is the gospel truth. And then something even more peculiar happened. Our people unearthed themselves well on Wall Street. Most people don't associate slavery with New York or the North. Truth is, all 13 colonies had slavery. With estimates of 10 to 20,000 people buried in this 7-acre burial ground, it's considered the largest known site of its kind in the U.S. Blakey's analysis of human skeletal remains revealed that these men and women were literally worked to death. How do you know? They suffered from enthesopathies, a condition resulting in the muscle detaching itself from the bone as a result of people being worked beyond human capacity. You lazy people, you. Isn't it amazing? Who works so hard that the muscle actually detaches itself from the bone? Who does that? I'll tell you who. Someone who has a gun trained on them from sunrise to sunset, and yet he asserted these things. He goes on to say something even more egregious. He says, we were dumb, cowardly, and incapable of feeling grief. These are his words. Why would Thomas Jefferson, one, assert it? Number two, why would he need to believe we could not feel grief? What was he and others like him doing? Well, you were ripping mothers away from their babies and husbands from wives and brothers from sisters. Surely they cannot feel grief. That would make them what? Like him. And yet he asserted it. But here's my question. Do you think he saw grief? You think he didn't hear and see the mother screaming and crying and begging them, don't take my babies? The man saw it and then asserted it didn't exist. And that is the pathology that surrounds whiteness.
So, you heard what she said, and she's exactly right. Now, there was something very important.
To sunset, and yet he asserted these things.
Very
he goes on to say
here.
something even more egregious.